what excites me is I'm seeing bigger, corporation and brand name willing to step into sustainability. They just don't have a model yet, or they have a company that yet services this. And so
Mhm.
hopefully we could provide that service at the beginning for them.
In today's episode, we speak with Joey Pham, founder of Eorte, a company creating regenerative uniforms and textile systems for the hospitality sector. Eorte supports the circular economy by creating a closed-loop system for textile waste within hospitality. Participating restaurants and hotels provide Eorte with discarded textiles, including bed sheets, quilts, towels, and other soft goods, which are then redesigned and remanufactured into products like aprons, lab coats, beddings, and uniforms, and the like, returning new products made directly from the original waste provided by the end user. But what is the main problem here? Well, everyone knows that fashion is unsustainable, but we're usually thinking about fashion brands, retail stores, Zara, fast fashion, things like that. But we often forget about other categories of textiles and soft goods. The hospitality industry alone produces enormous amounts of textile waste through linens, towels, beddings, and uniforms that are frequently discarded long before the material itself has reached the end of its usable life. And now, according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. generated roughly 17 million tons of textile waste in 2018, with over 11 million tons ending up in landfill alone. Now, sheets, towels, and other household textiles make up a significant portion of that waste stream. So what is the solution here? Eorte creates a first-of-its-kind platform for the hospitality businesses to divert textile waste from those landfills and transform it into the same categories of products these organizations already need and buy into. By repurposing existing materials into new uniforms and soft goods, Eorte reduces landfill-bound waste while helping businesses lower disposal costs and rethink how materials flow within their operations. Now, this conversation dives into the pursuit for real impact, the transition from employee to founder, and what it takes to build entirely new systems within older industries. Enjoy. Joey, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. I'm really excited to learn more about your story and Eorte as a business. But I'd like to start by asking really the broad question, which is what problem is Eorte solving and how did you come across this?
So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share Eorte. And what we saw as problem was textile waste. Hospitality obviously is the second biggest waste producer next to fashion. And the thing is that people really don't ever focus on to hospitality. Everybody talks about fashion, and that's like, shiny little object. But, people don't realize that within the restaurant industry or the cruise ship industry or theme parks, there's a huge gigantic waste stream that no one really talk about. And unfortunately, it all goes into a landfill. So that was kind of some of the reason why I approached this. As a creative director for a lot of big brands, I was traveling. I was constantly in hotels almost every other week. And so I started to realize to myself, like, okay, what happened to all this when I check out? Where does it go? And what is the lifespan? And when I did my research, it kind of scared me a little bit to know that, an average lifespan of a sheet is only 120 wash. That's 4 months. So yeah, which is scary, right? So imagine now 1,000-room hotel with 3 sheets per bed. So every 4 months, 9,000 of it goes out into the landfill and become waste. And there's no system that is designed to reuse it. And so and that's where Eorte came about. It didn't sit well with me, so I just want to solve a problem. So I started a company to solve the problem.
I love it. I love that. You said that you were traveling a lot for work. You were working for fashion houses. Can you elaborate on where you were in your life when this idea sort of crystallized and came about?
Funny enough, it was a late night flight into Hong Kong, and I just arrived in Hong Kong and had an early morning meeting, and I couldn't go to sleep, so I opened a bottle of wine, and it was red wine. And I actually knocked it over, spilled it all over my bed, and so I had a housekeeper came and try to clean it, and she replaced it. And I asked her while we're just having a conversation, I was like, what happened to these sheets? Like, do you wash again? And she was just sharing with me that no, most of the time, especially with red wine, it stains. And so what they do is they toss it out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, okay, so how often does this happen? And she shared with me that more than you think that it happens. And that, they just toss it out. And so that an idea popped into my head after that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. That makes sense. I don't even want to know what other stains
Yeah.
and what happens goes on in hotels. But I can imagine there's a lot of that. But you were working as a fashion designer,
I was a
correct?
creative director, so basically pretty much the same thing. It's just a higher level fashion
Yeah.
designer, but I we would be in Asia to put our collection, into works, and then we'll travel to Europe to shop, and then we come back to Asia to pick up our collection and come back to USA. So that was kind of something that we do on a quarterly base. And in fashion, I mean, obviously we design a year in advance. So I'm constantly in Milan, and then we go to Paris, and then we shop, and then we go to Asia. So it's kind of like this repeated patterns that we're constantly on. And then I do in store. So we go in store and look how our store setup is. So that's why I was traveling all the time. It was like every 2 weeks I was on the plane, and then I was in Los Angeles every 2 weeks, and then back on the plane again. So yeah,
So,
that was my life for quite a long time.
totally, totally. I mean, there's pros and cons to that. Fashion's a very glitzy and glamorous space, but it can be very taxing
No,
for many reasons. So you were in this space working as working as a creative director within fashion. I think a lot of people aspire to be in that role, and you're going to some of the bigger cities, let's say, in this space. But you know, one thing I want to learn about is the personal journeys behind entrepreneurs who are addressing sustainability in their own industries in their own spaces. Have you always thought? Did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Was that something you aspired to be? How did Tell me more about that?
I think like most fashion designer, we all want our own brand, and it
Mm,
sounds simple as it may. It's actually not that simple.
yeah.
So I did have two different brands that we end up selling off to a bigger, corporation. But that was the aspiration, was that as a fashion designer, we want our name on things, and so that was why I got into entrepreneurship, because knowing that sooner or later I'm going to launch my own brand, not realizing that beyond fashion, you need so much different aspect of your talent. So
Mm,
not only design, but you got to be able to sell, problem solving, production. There was just so many things that we don't realize that until into a business.
mhm,
But working for a corporation, we don't worry about any of that. All we do is design. So
mhm,
we don't worry about paycheck. We don't worry about any of that. It's just like every 2 weeks a check show up, and I'm like, good, okay, I moved on. But owning your own company, you gotta realize to yourself, where's the money going to come from? How do I
mhm,
support the next production round? How do I do all this stuff? How do I engage with my client? It was
mhm,
a lot. It's a huge learning curve, but I was so happy that I did it, because it taught me a lot of valuable lessons that I wouldn't be taught in school or anywhere else, to be honest with you. And fashion school doesn't teach you these things. They only teach you the fundamental of design. They don't really teach you the business aspect of fashion, which is a lot.
mm. Yeah, for sure. I see this pattern a lot with my creative, let's say, friends or people in sort of creative industries, is that there's that lacking of business acumen where there's a fixation or focus on the creative, whether it being the fashion design, whether it being the culinary arts, whether it being whatever it may be, but the business behind it is a core part of what we all do. I think of business always as like a second half of anything. Business is part of everything. You can be in the sciences, you can be in fashion, you can be in technology, whatever it may be, but there's a business side of things as well. Um, Joey, I want to hyper into this sort of idea that you had, and then the evolution of Eorte. Um, so you're experiencing this situation, which I'm sure happened multiple times throughout your journey, throughout your travels, where you're realizing, damn, like all this fabric just gets tossed to the landfill consistently in a very short lifespan. But you know the mechanics of fabric production. You understand how things are cut and sewn and stitched together and things of that nature, given your profession. But what happens next? What was the first iteration of Aorte, and then how did it evolve into the business that it is today?
Okay, thank you for that question. Actually, so the first part would be that during COVID, I mean, we all had time off. So
Mhm,
obviously, I had a few months off, and during that time, I thought to myself, you know what? I need to actually do something different with my career, because I feel like I've been in fashion for quite a long time, and I was, I don't know. For me, I felt like I was creating the fast fashion problem. I was producing product that doesn't get sell on the short sell cycle and then gets marked down and then gets shipped out. And so I told myself that the system's broken, but nobody wants to fix it. And so I told myself, okay, why don't I use my skill set and do something that's actually meaningful? So during, the whole COVID shutdown, I started just cleaning house as everyone else was doing. And I just started taking sheets that I was throwing away and I started remaking clothing. And that in itself led me to starting. It's actually Earth 4863. That was the first brand we started off of the sheets. It was a clothing brand. And so we were selling it to department stores. But during that whole period, I just realized to myself that we were making a big dent or the impact that we were imagining. So we were receiving the waste stream bigger than what we were solving. And so I was sitting in a warehouse filled with sheets galore, but yet I wasn't using it to the level that I need to use. And so that's where the pivot came about. Um, that's where it created. What Eorte does as a business is that we work with hotels and we take all the textile waste and we make uniforms out of it. Service uniform that gets sold back into the hotel itself, creating this circular economy that I truly feel that's important for the future because we really need to look at waste in a whole different way. And I think majority of people just think of waste as a vertical thing where you produce, you make, and then you throw it away. And I was like, no, there has to be a better way for this. And so we created a circular, option where we receive the waste, fiber it down, remake the yarns, weave it into a fabric, and then make the uniform and then sell it back to the hotel. So that in itself is a whole circular business model that, we're very proud to, that we're in actually.
No, I love it. I mean, you're not only just building a more sustainable product, right? Just something that has a marginally less environmental impact, but you're actually creating an ecosystem for a category that, to your point earlier, often gets overlooked in the discussion of sustainable fashion, right? Sustainable fashion, what does that mean? It means sustainable textiles, right? Soft goods. It's not just the shirt; it's the covering of my carpet. All these different things that I think, as you said, often get. Why do you think those sectors of textiles and soft goods gets overlooked whether it's in carpets or in furnishings or in hospitality versus fashion?
That's a great question, and I think truly there's just no ecosystem for it, and I think for the majority of hotel operator, and I'm not
Mhm.
throwing anyone under the bus, but it's just their attitude has always been if it's not broken, why fix it? And
Mhm.
that was kind of what we faced at the beginning of our business when we approach our partners. They're like, well, it's been working for this past 50 years, so why are we going to start changing it? And it saddened me because I'm like, well, we need to change it. Obviously, it's not serving us, and we're creating such a problem. But I feel like in I think the world needs more visionary people who are like myself, who sees a problem and finds solution for it. And it's not easy from day one because you're selling something that's brand new to an industry that's been around for quite a long time. And also you're changing mindsets. And so that was something that we as a business was facing as such a headwind at the beginning. It was basically telling our business partner, hey, there is value in this. And then also on secondary is that people associate sustainability with cost structure. So as soon as you mentioned that you're sustainable, your uniform sustainable, they're like, well, does that cost more? Why does it cost more? And so we always express value. At the end of the day, our job is to help you save money, but at the
Mhm.
same time, mandate your sustainable goal. I mean, that's really what we're trying to make it as seamless as possible. But
Yeah.
we're so new in this business that's why it's taking a little longer for people to adapt.
Yeah, yeah. A question that I want to always ask the entrepreneurs on my show is really how you position sustainability into your value proposition and how that has evolved over time. So, you mentioned saving money, right? Can you elaborate on what really the value proposition is for Ayorte? How does it save money for hospitality establishments?
So beyond the waste collection fee, which most hotel pay per month,
Mhm.
they also have to deal with landfill fee, which is another huge undertaking. And then now there's so many new laws and regulation that's coming about that a lot of hotel, especially the hotel partners that we work with, they don't know how to mandate that. And then every big corp has a sustainable goal that they're trying to reach. And so it's a lot for the hotel operator itself, because I mean their focus is heads and beds. Their focus is not how do we achieve sustainable sustainability and recycling. But what we do is we do a pickup for free, so that's already a saving in itself. We mandate laws because of a whole circular business model. But above and beyond that, when we resell back the uniform, we sell it at a discount, and then we do a take back. So there's so many laws and regulations that you're mandating. And then all of our uniforms has technology built into it. So, we attach sensor onto a uniform. So during our take back program, we also take everything back post live and recycle it again. So our goal is really, really to make it seamless for our hotel partners, but at the same time, be as sustainable as we can. So, that to me is what sustainability is about, is I guess responsibility. It's looking at waste stream, and a lot of people just don't think that way. It hasn't been thought that way for so long. And like I say, since we're so new to this, it's still so new to a lot of our partners, because they still trying to figure out what we're trying to do.
For sure. And something we'll get to later is how the hotel industry is designed around franchises. And you, from my understanding, you have to sell to each individual franchise, not just the corporate brand. Is that so?
You are correct about that. Yeah, the business, that was something that we learned. When we first started out, we thought that our Hilton was our Hilton's, or our Marriott was Marriott, until we discovered that that wasn't the case. So for us, what we had to do was get corporate approval, and then go individual hotel by hotel and ask them, hey, will you participate in this, sustainability project that we're working on? So what we always try to start out with a pilot to see if it's a great fit for the hotel and ourselves. But yeah, a huge learning curve from the beginning was the whole franchisee of hotels. We just assume corporation owns all the hotel, but that wasn't the truth. So that was a huge lesson for us to learn. And then, you because of our franchisee, you don't get buy-in from everyone. Some people see it as a value. Some people see it as a hassle. So our goal is to turn the hassle into a value. So how do you do that? You just have to be persistent.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to just like knocking on doors and also selling your product. I mean, that's the business side of this. Man, Joey, this is a really interesting business that you're building, and I really want to dive into the mechanics of this and how you move forward. But I don't want to jump too far ahead, because I still want to learn a little bit more about you, Joey, and how you sort of transitional period between creative director to founder. Something that prevents a lot of people from starting a business or making that leap is the finances and the financial implications of being an entrepreneur on their personal life. So I would love to learn how Eorte started with funding. How did you initially fund the company, and also how did you fund your personal life? Was there an overlap between still having a day job and starting the business, or can you elaborate on how that sort of came to be?
Great question again. I mean, from the beginning, yeah, it was a little scary, and I bootstrapped this whole business from the beginning. Between my savings and wherever income that we come in, I reverse it back into the company itself. It's not an easy ride for everyone. I don't think that an entrepreneurship is easy for everyone. That's why only X% makes it. Out of 10 companies, only 2 or 3 companies survive. I always tell myself that entrepreneurship is like going into a dark cave. Some people might not want to go into a dark cave because they don't know what's ahead of us. While most entrepreneurial keep moving forward, even though it's dark and you can't see what's ahead of you, you want to keep going and going until you discover this big, gigantic cabinet that you're like, wow, I'm so happy that I got to this point. Where some people are like, okay, it's too dark. I don't want to go in there. I don't want to do any of that. And so that's why I always share with other entrepreneurial is that it's not for everyone. But if you truly bet on yourself and you truly believe in your mission, you can make it. I mean, for years, I didn't pay myself. But I think
Mm,
most entrepreneurs would tell you if you're going in here thinking that you're going to bank from the beginning, then you got it all wrong.
yeah,
It takes years to
yeah.
get to.
So you were bootstrapping the business at the beginning, though. So a lot of your own savings, any income that you were getting on the side. But one, I want to know, was it a clean break between, starting the business and working as a creative director? Or was there a transitional period where you were still working as an employee somewhere else and starting the business? What did that timeline look like, or that transition look like?
So during the COVID break, I decided to leave my corporate job, and I
Hmm.
just told myself that I'm just gonna go full fledged into this, kind of like burn all ships. You kind of just gotta go full fledged and believe
Sure.
in yourself, and that's
Yeah.
kind of my attitude. Is that if I can't bank on myself and believe in myself, then who's gonna do it? And so I told
Completely.
myself that I need to prove that this is workable, and so I went full fledged on my saving, on my own money for 2 or 3
Wow.
years with no earning. But I think that makes you a stronger entrepreneur because you know what you have to do to get to where you need to go. So I think that
Hmm.
was a huge lesson. That was something that I'm happy that I just really fully trusted myself and believed in myself, and I pushed forward.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. One thing I am curious about is what you did for healthcare during all this, especially going, all in the early stages. Did you go a period without healthcare, health insurance? Tell me about that.
Well, I was actually very fortunate that my company extended my healthcare for 6 months after I left. So that was already a great blessing in itself. But then
Hmm.
I was also on my partner's healthcare, so I was always covered ever since. And then
Gotcha.
and then
Nice.
once we had the money, we started providing healthcare for the company, and then I was on my own healthcare. So yeah, so I was
Gotcha.
very
Okay.
fortunate. That's not for everyone, but I was very fortunate.
No, that's again, and not just the money side, but the health insurance side. Unfortunately, it's a variable for people in this nation. So, wanted to just sort of clarify that. Um, Now, let's take a step back and look at you not just as the individual, but as the business operator. And you're coming to the table with this sort of slew of experience as a creative director. What were your core strengths that you brought to the table as a founder? And what skills did you lack? Right? Were you a salesman and you didn't have the financial experience? Were you an operator? And tell me about this and how you sort of plugged in those gaps.
Another great question. I mean, coming from a fashion background, I ran teams. So I was running multi-million dollars operations. So I had that experience in itself. So I was able to run big teams, and understand the sales cycle. What I didn't have and what I was lacking was the fact of this whole fundraising and understanding the business side of the business. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs will face that sooner or later, understanding what a save is or, evaluation, things that never crossed my mind before. And I had to learn it on the fly. But that is what I learned today. Like now I could run on both sides. I could run on a creative side and then I could run on the management CEO side, which was something that I never had before. So going back to your question, yeah, that was my weakness. It's the business aspect. But that has changed in the past 2 or 3 years because now I'm well versed in it. But I think
Sure.
from experience, that's how you learn. To be honest
Yeah.
with you, that like I got my MBA on the job. To be honest with you.
No, 1,000%, 1,000%, without a question of a doubt. But you were a solo founder. How did you think about building your early support system, whether that being advisors, collaborators, contractors? How did you think about and make those moves to get certain people involved with the organization early on?
So the crazy thing is, I did a SWOT, and I did it on myself. Most people do it on the business. I did it on myself because I wanted to see to myself what my strength, my weakness are, and
Hmm.
then what I need to hire to. And that's how I started hiring people based off of that. So the first person I brought in was my co-founder,
Hmm.
Angelica, because I needed someone on the production aspect. Because running front of the house, I can. see what's happening back of the house.
Yeah.
So I need somebody strong that can help me operate on the back of the house while I keep moving the needle forward. So that was something that, I knew that was my weakness. My other weakness is sales. I'm good at face to face. I'm good at getting front, but I'm not good at constantly calling and trying to make appointments. Things that's not in my wheelhouse. I knew that was my weakness. And then finance. I mean, I don't think every entrepreneurs are good with finance. Finance is above and beyond. And when you start making a lot of money, finance
Yeah.
becomes such, I mean, a
Yeah.
roadblock for me. It was huge. So we hired the right CFO. We did. So that was kind of what I did from the beginning, was kind of did a SWOT analysis of myself and knew what my strength is and then I hired toward my weakness.
Mm. No, that's so real. And so like, it's so important to be so honest with yourself as you go through this. And I think the idea of doing a SWOT analysis on yourself is brilliant. So I think that's definitely a key takeaway from this is, just look at yourself objectively,
It's funny
Um,
because nobody really do that. And I was like, well, we do
yeah,
it for our business. Why don't we do it on ourselves? And I thought it was just kind of funny that we don't do that. And I just did it
yeah.
on myself. I mean, I don't know if that's the right or it's the wrong, but it helped me. So
That's all that matters. I mean, I think it would help anyone, to be honest with you. So, no,
yeah.
kudos to you on that one.
Yeah, because you really don't see your weaknesses until you write it out. And then you
Hmm.
realize to yourself, oh, I'm running a corporation, but I don't have all these accumens. And so I actually need to hire the right people to fill these roles. And that's how we built Eorte.
So your co-founder focused on production and back of house operations, let's say. How did you meet her and how did you get her on board?
She and I had been friends for quite a long time, and we had career crossing through a lot of different companies that we work with. So she understood my capability and she understood what I was going after. But beyond all that is that she also cared about the planet as much as I care about the planet. So we both aligned in that
Nice.
mission itself. And so she understood what we're trying to set out to prove. And so she was like, she was along for the ride. And, my goal for Eorte is not just sustainability, but community build out. We want to employ
Hmm.
local community. And so she's well connected within the whole industry in Los Angeles. So she was the perfect match for what I needed at the time. So that's how
Nice.
we became one.
Perfect. I love that. I love that. That's amazing. I'm happy that you guys found each other in that regard.
Thank
Um, Now zooming in a little bit and looking at the actual business end. So let me get this straight. You are able to take the hospitality textile waste for free from these establishments. You clean them, you deconstruct them, and you put them into a fiber to fiber recycling process, correct? And from that new fiber, you create new fabric, which then gets cut and sewn into new garments for the same hospitality service providers that you engaged with in the beginning, correct?
That's the goal, and that's the core of our business. But we also sell
Mhm.
to restaurants, so a lot of time restaurant doesn't contribute to the waste stream. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
our whole strategy is how do we provide a sustainable uniform option, because that doesn't
Hmm.
exist. And so by just doing, you know, leveraging on my knowledge of fashion and understanding the whole fiber to fiber recycling,
Hmm.
that helped us to find solution of how so our fabric has a nicer weave, it's softer, and then a lot of time we do direct cut, so we take the sheet and we direct cut it to make
Yeah.
shirts out of it. And so there's aspect, and I think coming from the fashion background, you look at raw material as raw material, and
Hmm.
so that's how we approach it on the design level. Is that okay? Now we got rugs. What do we do with these rugs? We have shower curtains. What do we do with these shower curtains? We have duvet. What do we do with all this? So it's above and beyond sheets. It's
Hmm. Yeah, I understood, of course. So then, why is it the type of garment that, or rather, is it the type of material that you receive that will determine whether it goes to actual cut or fiber to fiber recycling? Like for a sheet can go into fiber to fiber recycling, but another a quilt can't, or something of that nature. What determines that end of life solution?
by just looking at the product itself and the amount. Actually, that's the secondary aspect. I mean, our goal is not to fiber everything down because that's a cost
Hmm.
structure to it.
Yeah.
But what a towel. You can't really cut a towel into a garment. No one walks around with a towel garment. Well, at least I don't know anyone,
Not,
but
not, yeah, not at scale, yeah.
especially in hospitality in itself. But so those things get fibered down, and then we deal with, like I said, duvet. We deal with blackout curtains, things that you can't just do a direct cut. And so we always trying to figure out a solution for it. And so that's how
Mm,
it works out. And then also the amount, because sometimes you get abundance of things, and then sometimes you don't. It's
yeah,
That's what makes the waste stream so different all the time, because one day you get thousands of towels, and then next day you don't get as much towel. You get
yeah.
thousands of sheets, or you get duvet out of nowhere, and so you just have to constantly be on your toe figuring out solutions.
For sure, for sure. No, it makes sense because I can't imagine that fiber to fiber recycling is an easy route. But given the variability in your supply and the I would imagine the desire for a consistent end product, correct? I mean, that's also something that is a variable for you, right? Is making sure that when a establishment has an Aorte uniform, they know that it's going to be high quality and they know it's going to be well designed and things of that nature. Can you speak to how that variability in the supply of your materials plays an impact on the output of your final product?
Yeah, another great question. And what we face from the beginning is infrastructure build out. There's just
Mm,
not a lot of company out here that does or service what we need to do. So for us to find someone to fiber down our fabric was already a task in itself. And then now trying to find a spinner in America that will still spin is another problem in itself. And then spinning from a product that they never spin from before was another huge undertaking for us, because a lot of company, they don't want to pilot, they don't want to try new things, they want to stay from what they know, the true and the money making. So for us to talk a lot of company into doing what we need to do was really hard from the beginning, and then figuring out the weaving aspect, because there's not a lot of weaver in America itself, and we've been trying to keep Eorte as an American made brand. That
hmm
was the goal of this whole thing. But I didn't expect it to be such an exercise to trying to find all these stakeholders
hmm
to provide service for us to get to the next step. And so we're fortunate that we were piloting with a few big company that was willing to help us. And so we're still in pilot mode. I don't think we will ever get out of pilot mode, to be honest with you. But we have a
Yes, you
system.
will. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Yes, you will, Joey.
But we have a system down, and we
Yes.
have a process that's happening, and so it's serving us. But again, we're expanding, and now we're doing post uniform from the hotel, and that's another huge, piloting aspect that we have to pilot, because we haven't took a uniform and and break it down yet. And so,
Mm,
and as you know, with textile to textile recycling, every time you break down a fiber, it gets thinner, and so you
yeah.
have to figure out the back end solution to
Mhm.
how we. So it was a huge learning curve, but I'm happy that we went through it, and so we wouldn't be here today if we didn't learn all these lessons.
So many of the workwear brands or so many of the products that I guess you're dealing with, the material input are synthetic blends, I would imagine, cotton, poly, things like this. How does that impact the potential for fiber to fiber recycling or the whole design process?
It does impact, because we try to separate 100% cotton to a poly blend. What we didn't know and what we discovered was that majority of hotel is a poly blend.
Mm,
I always assumed it was 100% cotton, because that's what I thought. If I'm paying $200 a night, I thought it's going to be
you'd think,
100%
yeah.
cotton. So, but we found that there's only a few brands that carries 100% cotton, and the higher you go in price point, you get Egyptian cotton. So you go higher and higher and higher
Sure.
into a value chain. But yeah, we didn't know that from the beginning, and that was a huge learning lesson. And the way that we discovered the polyblend is from dyeing. When we're dyeing to specific color, we couldn't contain the color that our client want, because there's a shade, or there's a cross dye, or there's two tone, and
Yeah.
so that process was a learning curve in itself.
Mm,
But now we know, so we separate from the beginning. As soon as it
mm.
comes in, we separate the tag. But sometimes we receive things with no tags. And so, so we have technology that we try to identify what the fiber content is, but it's not 100% accuracy. So, we're still learning and we're still figuring it out.
Yeah. Is the fiber to fiber? I'm curious about the fiber to fiber recycling because that's been a big topic within the world of sustainable fashion overall, and there's been a lot of success. There's been a lot of companies involved with that, but at the same time, the let's say success or the scalability is limited, especially when you're dealing with synthetic blends. And so I'm curious to know how. What are the barriers to scaling that technology in your head in the United States or North America compared to where it is today?
You know, for me, what I see the problem lies in America. I'm only speaking America. I'm not speaking anywhere
Sure.
else. It is
Yeah.
it's the fact that everybody does one solo thing, but you need a community to build out your business. Like for
Hmm.
us, it's like we had to go one person and they only focus on fiber. And then we had to go to another person who only focus on spinning. They don't weave. And then we had to go to, so it's like you need every single person to be part of your value chain to make this all work. And so what we're trying to do at Eorte is we're trying to create a vertical where we own almost every lane, or we partner with everybody within those lanes to try to achieve our end result. So, there's company out there that just focus on poly only. And so if your sheet is, 45% poly and 55% con, there's company that just burns out all the con and keep the poly, but that doesn't sit well with me because I'm wasting 55% of the fabric content to get 45% of content. And so to me, it doesn't really answer my question of sustainability and recycling. Like we
Hmm.
wanted to try to keep the integrity of our raw material and then figure out a secondary solution. That's really the ultimate goal of Eorte.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You mentioned something that is really important to this, which is like the ecosystem, like the community component to it, right? It's not just about one specific specialty, especially when we're designing for a circular economy. We have to be thinking about how we're engaging all these different stakeholders and partners into one larger thing, right? And that's a challenge, especially when we live in an economy that's very much, let's say, again, specialized and focused on their own, quarterly profit margins and whatnot. How have investors or the investment community reacted, in your eyes, to companies like yours that are building circular systems compared to those that are building singular products or singular services?
Hmm, interesting question. I mean, we're very fortunate with our investing community because we're actually proving value for what we're bringing to
Hmm.
the table. So we're able to get the investment that we needed.
Hmm.
But again, we're doing something that is so new that hasn't existed yet. And so for us to speak to investor about our objective, sometimes it either go over their heads or they see it, but they don't really truly understand it. They don't
Hmm.
see it in the economic level that we see it. And so I think what it taught me was that my job is just how to explain this better. How do I make you become a believer? So instead of someone that say, okay, that's a nice to have, where I can make you a need to have. And so we don't use laws and regulation as kind of our support system, but that helps a lot. We actually just talk about the true value. Like we're helping waste, preventing waste from going into a landfill. And I think that in itself should be a huge undertaking. But yeah, just education, I think, because a lot of investors they only see the trend of investment. They don't really understand what's on the horizon yet until it hits
Hmm.
there. So we were early. And so it took me quite a long time to really, persuade the investor. But now, I mean, once they're in, they're in. They truly believe in the system.
Hmm. Hmm. That makes sense. That makes sense. Um, when you're dealing though with your customers, right, with these franchisees and whatnot, and restaurants and any of the organizations that you're selling to or they're using your product, what how have they responded to potentially the quantitative impact of your business, right, in terms of the environment, not from a financial standpoint, but when you're talking about how you're helping them reduce their waste, helping them potentially reduce their scope 3 or whatever it may be, what kind of messages around sustainability land and do not land with these businesses?
What we learn is that sustainability is a nice to have, not a need to have. So at the
Mm,
end of the day, it really comes down to price point. Does your price point, meet our other price point, your competitive price point, and can you produce the same product they produce? Because it's a need within, the hotel or the restaurant. They need an apron, they need a waiter shirt. But if we're like, $10 above what they're paying, then sustainability doesn't really play into it. But what
mhm,
we try to do is we beyond sustainability, we talk about community build out. We produce everything locally. We hire within the community that we work with. So there's a job aspect to this whole thing that's very important. And that's how we speak back to our hotel. Our price might be 50 cents above, but think about the employment in America. Think about job creation. Think about what you're doing in local community to help support the hotel that you're in. So that
mhm.
to me is a bigger picture. So that's what we use when we go back to our partners. Like, yeah, we might be 50 cents above, but look at what the impact you're creating beyond sustainability.
Are uniforms generally perceived as commodity products by these organizations, or uh, do they think of it differently?
No, you're right. It is a commodity, and what we face, as I shared earlier, is that people don't want to fix things that's not broken. And
Yeah.
so if they've been doing something for the last 20 years and out of nowhere there's this young company comes out, hey, we could buy a sustainable uniform at the same price as you're paying. Would you willing to change? It takes a while. And so,
Yeah.
we get small little pilot, we test through. We're still considered to be a young company and a lot of bigger hotel chain wants us to be a legacy brand. But in order for us to be legacy, we have to be around for 10 years to 20 years. And time is the essence, and so
Yeah.
we just have to we see ourselves still at the infancy stage. But we're very fortunate to have partners that's willing to take the risk and work with us because they see the value in what we're trying to bring. And that, again, going back to what I share with you, is we focus on value. What is it that we provide that bring value to you, as opposed to being any sustainability or anything else.
Hmm, hmm. And that makes total sense, and as it should be, right? Because if you're not able to provide the client with real value, then you're not gonna stay in business. Um, I'm curious one thing about your product, though. You talk about this sort of circular system. They provide you with the textile waste, and you make uniforms for them. Are Is there a way for the hotels to get product that's directly made from the textile waste that they provided, or is it all kind of going into the same bucket? Um, that Marriott and that Hilton coming together, and then the restaurant getting a mixture of both, or something like that, or is the Hilton getting the product made from the textile waste that Hilton provided?
Another great questions. I think we deal with a lot of big brand incumbents that's been around longer than we have,
Hmm.
but I think that sustainability it's something that is a nice to have, but it's not a need to have with them yet. So their business model is not focused purely on sustainability. They're focused on what's been working, what's been
Hmm.
proven. And so if you're $100 million uniform company, you're going to focus on your business model of $100 million company. You're not going to suddenly out of the left field go, I'm going to go in and invest into sustainability. So company like myself, who are a little smaller and we're a little bit more nimble, we're able to test and pilot and do a lot of things that big corporation won't be able to do it yet.
Hmm.
And I mean, ultimately, our exit strategy is either we do an MMA where we merge with a bigger brand that takes us over, or we go IPO ourselves. But I think the opportunity of us merging with a bigger player makes complete sense because we already tested through our whole vertical. And now
Mm.
that they merge with us, we bring in our knowledge and our vertical into a bigger corporation and run a sustainable version or a division for them. I see
Mhm.
that being the future of how we play out our business.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Because there's so many, I would say, even adjacent products that could be. The thing I like about uniforms, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that uniforms as a product are, highly used. They are non-trend focused, like fashion is, right? So they're not swayed by that to the same extent. Yet at the same time, they're I think they would just fit more into a circular system better than, let's say, the cute top of the summer 2026 or whatever, you know? Are there other types of uniforms or textile uses that the Eorte model could work within, whether it being, I don't know, carpets or uniforms in other categories outside of hospitality or restaurants and things like that?
Funny you asked that question. So we're working on a project that I can't really go in full detail with, but we're providing tote bags. That has been a huge, huge opportunity for us. So making tote bags out of recycled material for big institution has been a huge thing. Another big area for us, lab coats. That was something that we never ever anticipated. But it became a need for us, and it
Yeah.
became something that we pilot through some big school. And so it for us is that we don't want to really limit ourselves. Our goal is textile recycling. At the end of the day, that's really what we are. We're a
Mhm.
textile recycling company that provide an end result, and our end result is sustainable uniform or product on the back end. We had corporation that's asking us to do merch for them at the same time, and then do a take back program from their merch. So what excites me is I'm seeing bigger, corporation and brand name willing to step into sustainability. They just don't have a model yet, or they have a company that yet service this. And so
Mhm.
hopefully we could provide that service at the beginning for them.
What type of support or change would you like to see the government play in enabling circular systems, primarily within fashion?
Another great question, and I wish that we wouldn't take away things like EPA and things that give us grants and help us pilot further. Because I
Yeah.
mean, there was a lot of different programs under the EPA that was helping companies like myself to scale onto a bigger platform. But when that was cut and our grant was moved aside or cut or limited down, it didn't really help us. And so we had to go to solution A, to solution B, and solution C. But
Hmm.
I think that also helped me as an entrepreneur because it kept me on my toe and not to rely on things and figuring
Hmm.
out a secondary solution if first solution doesn't work out.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, and also the support of our government agency. It's very hard to hear that our government doesn't believe in climate change, and I'm here pushing for climate change because it really is a reality. And so, but
Of
it's hard
course,
because
yeah.
that sets investor thought process into a whole different aspect because they're like, if laws and regulation can't protect you, why would we invest in you? And that has been a huge, undertaking in
Yeah.
itself to try to explain that to
Yeah.
investors that no, we actually provide a service that brings value.
Um, Joey, one last question I have for you. If you were to talk to yourself a few years ago when you started this business, what advice would you give yourself, and what advice would you give other entrepreneurs who are building circular systems?
My big advice to myself is it will get better. It will get better. You won't see it now, but it will get better. And it goes back to that analogy of going through a cave. It's you're in darkness. I think
Mm,
entrepreneurship is like you're really in darkness because you don't know what's ahead of you. You have no clue what's ahead of you. But if you truly believe in what you're doing and you truly are passionate about what you're trying to solve, you will get through it. And I had. I mean, there was times when I tell myself, okay, I could go back to a paycheck every 2 weeks, not worry about all this stuff. But my mission was bigger than that. And so I told
mm.
myself that somebody gotta do this. And it's kind of this is me speaking about myself, is that it was given to me to do this. So I should take it and run with it. And that's what stops me from going back to a corporate job.
It's fair enough. Well, Joy, I appreciate your time today. I think this has been super insightful, and I know there's a lot of gems in this conversation for people who are interested in circularity and sustainable fashion and take back programs and things like that. I mean, I want to acknowledge you for what you're doing, and to your point, it is a dark cave at times, especially when you're building something from the ground up in a space that is not developed or mature at all, which not only circular systems, but textile to textile and fiber to fiber recycling. So you are a pioneer in this space, and I acknowledge you for that. And I appreciate you for that because the world needs more people like you and doing what you're doing. So keep at it.
Thank you so much for your kind word. I mean, thank you so much. I mean, we truly believe in what we're trying to bring as a value chain. And so that's not going to stop me any day soon. We're going to continue to keep scaling, as long as we can, because we really truly see that we're creating a solution for a problem that exists.
Absolutely. Well, we support you there. Thank you so much, Joey, for your time, and we'll be speaking soon.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.